Welcome back, guys.
Glad to be back. So, fellas, this week we're going to be talking about fighting through failure, because being low is one thing, but like failure is just a whole ball of wax, different ball of wax. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So, first thing, how do you personally define failure, and how has that definition evolved over time? Mr. Griffin.
Yep. Personally defining failure.
Mhm.
I would define failure if you don't know why you failed. That's how I would define failure. Truly, like true failure. Because if you fail at figuring out why you failed, then you have really failed.
You've double flunked.
But if you failed at something, but you know why, and you can learn from it, then I would say you didn't fail. You actually learned something. It just went a different direction. The success turned into learning from being unsuccessful. And therefore you can then take that knowledge and not do it again. And you stop beating yourself up about it too, and you can actually move on. And I think that's a lot of people stay down because they're continuing to beat themselves up and loop that self loop in their head. Can't do it. I can't do it. Josiah is already doing that, and we're trying to get it out of him, where he's like, I can't. And when you self loop that and you do that enough times, you will start to believe that, and it goes into your subconscious, and then you're telling yourself that for everything. And I'm like, we gotta get this out of him. You can. You have to at least try. If you don't ever try, then you don't know if you can or not.
Yep.
Anyway, what about you guys?
Yeah, for me, failure means in the worst scenario, generally, that I didn't do something I committed to doing. If that's taken place, I don't like to sign up for things willy-nilly. I don't like to just say, oh yeah, for sure, throw me in there, I'll do it, and then just think about it, the day I'll be like, oh crap, I forgot. I'm generally pretty careful with that. I don't volunteer for things that I know I'm not going to be at.
Exactly, guys. Really... Now you understand the church dilemma.
Oh snap! Gonna go and sneak that one in early. No, I even at church, like I do volunteer for a number of different things that are church, but it's purposeful. Like I am not just maybe not. Like and so if I have told someone I'm going to do something and I don't do it, that's like,
oh, it's a promise. That's the way I always look at it. You're literally, if you say yes, that in turn is a promise.
Yep.
Whether you say, oh yeah, I promise. No, if you say yes to someone on anything, you are promising that person.
Right. And so to me, then you break it down. It's like two things happened here. So if I said I was going to do something, I didn't do it. Either it was, and this is like probably 95% of the time inside my control, right? For whatever reason, I didn't prioritize, whatever. But that's the 5% of the time, one-offs where something truly external affected things in such a way that either for one reason or another, I could not make it work. And those are what what happens generally, people aren't honest enough to determine that most of the time it's your fault. And they say, well, this happened or this came up. It's like, well, that does happen, but it's a lot less often than I think people want to take credit for. So for me, I have to focus on like, okay, why didn't this happen when I said, it was going to happen? Where did I drop the ball? Right. So that I try to limit those occurrences as much as I do just about anything. Cause I really, really hate signing my name to something and then having to be like, oh, by the way, that hasn't happened. That's failure for me in a big way.
Yeah. Isn't it in the Bible? It's like, keep your promises, even if it hurts. Yeah. That's something that, that's something that when I started taking that more to heart, I've started really paying attention to who I'm promising, like who I'm saying yes to, because I have kept my promises and it hurts. Like, financially hurts. I have to wake up early. I don't want to wake up super early, like stuff like that, because I've said I'm going to do that. Like sometimes you have to bend over backwards and you learn again, you learn from your mistake, but you can at least try to keep it. Anyway, what about you, Yemi? What's your definition?
A failure? I would say it's not meeting the goal, not meeting the expectation, but on top of that, not getting back up to try again. I feel like it's the slamming the door on the possibility of this ever occurring. I consider that a failure.
Yeah.
So, and before it was like, I used to think of it as, it was a loss. Like, oh, I failed to do this. I lost at this, blah, blah, blah. But even if you drop the ball in some aspect, you have the opportunity to pick it back up. You can, try to make it better, try to improve.
Sure.
But failure, I believe, is just slamming the door completely on that thing ever occurring.
Has failure ever paralyzed you from like making decisions?
Yeah. Like where it's so in the moment, it's so overwhelming that you can't move. You're stuck there. You're frozen. All you can see is just this giant looming thing, and you don't know which way to attack it, which way to, what to do with it, how to handle it, if it can be handled. And it's all just overwhelming. And you're just in like we talk about there's a fight or flight, like physiological response where you're just in that response and cannot conceive, like mentally, your higher mental functions can't function because it's just survival instinct.
Yeah, I would say same for the dance studio, because I was co-owning it with Sarah Jane, and I saw the studio failing. I saw where it was going. I saw it like a year before like we actually pulled the plug. And mentally, if I had just done what I ended up doing anyway, which was getting us out of it, if I had just done that a year before, I think there would have been it wouldn't have crashed and burned as hard as it did. Because literally that's what happened. But I was paralyzed because Sarah Jane is also owning it, and I'm trying to consider her feelings, and she wants to keep trying and keep doing it. And I knew that that was always going to be the argument. There was not actually a plan to end it with her.
Yeah.
And I knew that because we had been talking about it months and months beforehand. Like I was trying, and that's usually with us. If I see something that I know needs to change, just in being married, I've learned that I have to give her enough room. And in this case, I knew it was a big thing, and I gave her a year of just always talking about, listen, I know this is happening. This is going to happen. We're going down this hill. We can close it now or not. Stuff like that. At the same time, trying to be considerate of her as being a co-owner. But I'm also the husband, and I have to stand for my family, and like I need to make a stand somehow, and I can see this being detrimental. So yeah, that was pretty paralyzing, and just knowing that's what's happening.
What about
you, Aaron? Do you have anything?
Oh,
I
can't think of a particular time that I was paralyzed, but I can think of a couple times when a failure led to another couple failures because I made bad decisions after the first failure, and so it like kind of was like a couple of mini dominoes, and that's bad too. I think one of the previous episodes I talked about how like real low point for me was having payroll bounce for LexClean in the early commercial cleaning days, and it was around that time, actually, sometime after that, is that we were kind of putting things back together, that we still were just struggling with cash flow, and ended up as a result taking out a bad loan with very, very bad terms. I should have never done. Ended up spending a whole lot of money on that loan, but it was because of not doing things properly earlier on that then you get to that point, and then I made another bad decision because of those failures to like fix it. And that has more often been a problem for me, more so than getting paralyzed. It's like I almost think maybe paralyzing would be good for my case.
Oh yeah,
because
like
instead I'm acting
thinking about it.
Yeah, because I'm acting a little bit too fast. Okay, well let's just fix it, and then it's like maybe not getting enough time to sort through the options. So I might have a problem with not getting paralyzed enough.
Have you
No.
have you guys ever had any mentors that have helped you with like dealing with failures, or have you've learned from? Obviously God in the Bible is a good, lots of people failing in there and getting back up.
That's true.
I know for me, e-commerce, Chris Waller. Yeah, Chris Waller. He's the one that taught me e-commerce. Obviously, my dad was a great, over the years mentor, and just how he ran his business, and always, through their really low lows, always, turning to the Lord, asking for direction. What should I do? How are we going to pay? How are we going to do payroll? Tell me what to do. And he's like, go to the bank and get a loan. Loans, the bank's not going to loan me any more money. We've already been loaned out. He's like, go to the bank. And he's like, okay. He went to the bank and they gave him a loan.
I have probably a few different ones, but one that really this is not a mentor, but this is somebody that I drew on. Todd Stottlemyre wrote a book called Relentless Success, I think was the name of it. So he was a guy who he was a pro baseball player, and when he left that career, he got into investing and just had crazy success. But then in the 2008, 2009 financial crisis, just lost. He was like really heavily leveraged in real estate, and he just like bottomed out. And the problem with him in particular is that he just held on to everything because he's like, well, the market's going to rebound, like it's going to come back. And so after everything was wiped out, he didn't sell anything, and it just kept getting lower and lower and lower than he could have like possibly anticipated. And so by the time he finally did get out, it was so much worse than if he, sold stuff out earlier. It just nobody could have, imagined it was that bad. And he's got a few stories in there, and like his whole life went from like up here to just like the worst of the worst. And there are a few examples that's just one I think of a few times, but there are a lot of, I think those kind of books, like, again, they're not direct mentorship, but I like to read about that stuff because for me, it helps sort of balance. I've never had something happen that bad, and I've never been as successful either. Right. So like those extremes, but it helps put that in perspective, right? Because even a failure that you may think is like, oh my gosh, this is like, this is world changing for me. You're probably not even scratching the surface of some seriously epic failures. And so as long as I have that to look through and balance back, it's like, well, if this guy could pull himself out of that and not just like say, crap, it's over, I'm probably going to figure out a way. It's probably going to be all right.
Yeah. Years ago, I had someone who I encountered and worked for. His name is Alex Sharfin. And Alex, in the 2008 crash and everything, lost. They were heavily into real estate. And so they ended up reaching the point where it was like bankruptcy. They needed to file Chapter 13. And he was listing off assets, and they reached a point where it was like they may have had to sell his wife's wedding ring.
Oh.
And it was just, he said it was the most humbling thing for him. And he said it really, like, he really took stock of what was important. And his wife's name is Katie. And he's like, as long as I have Katie, I can deal with anything. As long as, and like, she said, I'm with you, we're going to get through this, and he's like, as long as I have Katie, I can get through anything. And they ended up like within a year of that, basically being able to pay back their creditors because of something they launched, in a business they started. And recently, they decided to just close up shop as far as their business. They had made the money they were going to make, more than enough to retire and everything. And ultimately, just that decision to just persevere despite failing in one particular aspect of business, pivoting into something else and moving forward. That's one of those things that just kind of stuck with me. Just like he nailed down what was most important to him, and that was his relationship with his wife. And that's just one of those things. It's like, I mean, I've gone through my own personal failures and stuff, and as long as I've got Crystal, like, I'm good. As long as like, she's there, the encouragement and everything, like, as long as there's that, then I can deal with everything else. Like, this may suck, but like, what's important is what's important. So
it's good.
Yeah, my My dad would be a good one to get on the podcast because he has a very similar story. They did have to file for bankruptcy, and they did have to sell mom's ring. They ended up going and buying it back though, which was cool.
Hmm.
But and then they built the business. God gave them the business for $10, and they called back all the creditors. It was like I don't know how many years, but a good amount later, and was like, I want to pay you guys back. And they're like, oh, don't worry about it. We already wrote it off.
Hmm.
Like, oh, okay. I think you would really enjoy his book. Just saying.
So the victims cry.
By Stephen Griffin.
Yeah.
Okay.
Nice.
Thank you, Uncle Google. Pulled it up. First listing on there. So good to go.
Cool.
All right, guys. It is lightning round time.
Cool.
If failure was a food, what would it taste like?
Licorice.
Oh, dude, black licorice?
Yeah.
100% black licorice. Bro, 100% it would be black licorice.
It would, dude.
I'd almost eat a shoe over black licorice. Gosh, that stuff is terrible.
Yeah.
That or mushrooms thing. Yeah. Ugh.
Peanut butter.
Peanut butter. Nah, dude. No. Look,
Peanut
you may
butter's
not
good. What are you
like
talking about?
Dude,
you may not like peanut butter, but I don't know that it could be a like failure tasting category.
It tastes like failure. Peanut butter, rye bread.
Yeah, moldy bread.
I don't love like peanut butter straight, but I like it in certain applications. Black licorice is something that I don't care how you do it.
You can't put it in anything.
You cannot redeem it. Like it is a worthless item. So
okay, what's the next one? What else you got for us?
All right. What's the most ridiculous way you've ever tried to avoid failure?
I haven't done anything illegal yet, but if I had, that would be the most ridiculous way. I'm trying to think.
What do you mean? Like, what's the most craziest thing you've done to avoid failure, maybe?
Yeah.
Does it matter if it worked?
No.
Oh, okay. Like to attempt to avoid failure.
Yeah.
Because I've done some stuff and it still failed. So if it's a non-successful metric.
I don't know.
Yeah, nothing that I particularly want to share.
Same.
On the public airwaves.
Yeah. I had another life before I was with you guys, so
you're not trying to dig that back up?
No, we're not going there.
Get a subpoena issued or anything?
You see? All right. So what's the first thing you do when you realize something has just bombed spectacularly?
Try to laugh.
Yeah, try to laugh for sure. It's not usually the first thing, but the first like seriously productive thing I do is try to figure out where my personal responsibility lies in it. That's not, again, I'm not so virtuous as to that's the instinctive, like number one thing that happens, but the first thing that's productive is going to be that. It might take me a minute to get there, but yeah, look for personal responsibility.
I mean, if it failed like really bad and I didn't know it was going to fail, obviously if I knew it was going to fail and I'm trying everything to not make it fail and it fails, that's infuriating. But if something just fails, then my first thing would be, okay, why did it fail?
Mm-hmm.
You know, what happened here? Anyway, ciao, guys.
All right, guys.
Good times.
Another one. Thank you for, very transparent conversation discussing failure. So on to the next.
Bye-bye.
See you next time.
Hello.